Blue Lock could have been the chosen sports anime, bro. From a manga perspective, it had everything needed to really take sports anime and blow it up into a new nexus of the global mainstream. And to give credit where credit is due, it did to an extent after season 1. But once that season 2 came around and everyone saw how it looked, yeah, man, it was a GG. Sports anime fans like myself will now have to wait another 10 or so years for the sports anime avatar cycle to reset and for a new chosen sports anime to come and, hopefully push the envelope even further than Blue Lock did. Today, I want to introduce you all to an anime that I think sets a good standard, right? A great standard, actually. Like, no way is this particular series going to be the next sports anime avatar. I think the fact that it's kind of a furry anime makes it a bit too niche to really pop off like that, but I do think that whatever the next big sports anime is that comes after Blue Lock, Boku no Buckets or whatever, I don't know, the LeBron adaptation or whatever, it needs to look like this anime that I'm about to show you right here, because this right here, this is peak sports anime, bro. Alright, so to start off with a bit of context so that the events of Umamusume make sense, because if I don't give at least a little bit of background lore, I promise you that the world building of this universe is gonna throw you for a loop. But to make a long story short, in the world of Umamusume, you have your Umamusume, these human horse hybrid furry girls that are essentially like the main focus of the series. Now there's a lot of things about these Umamusume that kinda go unanswered, at least within the purview of this movie. For example, we never really find out why there are like thousands of horse women but 0 horse men. We also never really find out how these horse human genetics work from like a reproductive standpoint, and you know what, let's just leave that train of thought at the train station before I put this video's monetization status at risk. But in spite of all the mystery that Umamusume are shrouded in, we do know one thing for sure about these horse girls. And that's the fact that they are born to run. The story of Umamusume follows a bunch of these horse girls as they compete in what's essentially a cross between track and field and horse racing. Apparently both the races and the girls are based off of like IRL horse races and the horses that competed in them, which I think is a pretty cool fun fact. But in this particular video, we're going to focus less on the overall narrative of the movie, which, is like your typical shonen rivalry type shit, and instead focus more on the races themselves, because I think that's where the appeal of Umamusume really shines through. A well-animated sports anime is one thing. We've gotten a good few of those throughout the ages, but when we start talking about a sports anime where the animators literally animate individual beads of sweat on the athletes' faces, no glaze, but I think we may be looking at some goat shit, bro. So the thing about Umamusume is that this movie doesn't look as good as it does for no reason, right? Like if we're talking about funding, the reason that this movie has the pristine top of the line animation quality that you're witnessing in this video is because this movie is backed by the Umamusume video game, which is a gacha game. Now, for those of you who don't know what a gacha game is, all you need to know for the sake of this video is that these games print money, all right? Like when you have a player base that is willingly spending hundreds, sometimes thousands on virtual horse girl PNGs, yeah, man, it's probably not going to be too difficult for you to afford peak animation for a little movie or two. Now, the thing about the Umamusume game is that it isn't just about flashy characters and cool animations. The reason people keep coming back and spending money on the game is because the game is designed to hook you in. Progress, rewards, the thrill of unlocking something new. This game utilizes all of these different features to basically absorb your wallet. Let's just keep it a full stack right now. Now, credit where credit is due. Good game design is good game design, even if the game in question is specifically designed to be a wallet abuser. But imagine if there was a game that utilized this sort of addictive game design for good. Imagine if there was a game that wanted to give to you instead of taking from you. Well, that brings me into the sponsor of today's video, 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠. 𝙏𝙖𝙡 uses the same addictive game design that Umamusume uses to take your money, except instead of getting you hooked to spending money, it teaches you back-end development in the Python and Go programming languages by getting you hooked to coding. Learning to code is basically a battle of attrition. It takes a lot of time and dedication no matter how you spend it, and so one of the best ways to learn to code, at least in my opinion, is to have a tool like 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠 that will help you fall in love with the process of learning how to code while also teaching you along along the way. If you've been thinking about learning how to code, take this as your sign to start. If you go to 𝙏𝙠 today and use my code TeddySlump, you can get 25% off your first year if you choose the annual plan. And if you're on the fence, they have a 30-day no questions asked refund policy, so there's literally no risk in at least trying it out. Thank you again to 𝙏𝙠 for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel again. And now, back to the video. Now back to our virtual racing horse girls. Alright, so the first race I want to talk about happens at the beginning of the movie. It's essentially like our introductory race, right? Like it's the race that introduces us to all of the important horse girls that we'll be following throughout the rest of the movie. The main horse girl in this movie is a girl named 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠, alright? Crazy name, I know, but bear in mind these girls have horse names, not people names. And yeah, I guess the rich niggas who buy horses IRL really love giving their horses dumbass names. But 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠, or 𝙏𝙖 as everyone in the movie calls her, is currently making her grand debut as an Umamusume. And as she's walking out to the stadium, making her way out to the starting gate, she runs into a more seasoned Umamusume who will go on to be her rival throughout the rest of the film. This other horse girl's name is Agnes Tachyon, and to make a long story short, Tachyon is basically like a scientist chick who's obsessed with the idea of reaching peak Umamusume. Like she's obsessed with the idea that someone could surpass their horse girl limits and become the greatest Umamusume of all time. Anywho, Tachyon and 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠 are making their way out to the stadium, bantering along the way, but fast forward to a few minutes later, and all the horse girls have made their way outside and into the starting gate so that our inaugural horse race of the movie can begin. 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙠 takes one last deep breath as she prepares for the race ahead of her, and just as she finishes readying herself, the doors to the starting gate fly open and the opening race of the movie has officially begun. 𝙏𝙖𝙡 takes off, flying out the gate and onto the racetrack with her competitors. We actually get this really dope first-person POV of the race as she takes off. Like, it's this type of shit that makes this movie really go crazy. But as the horse girls round the first turn of the 2,000-meter track, 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is somewhere in the middle of the pack saving her energy, and not far behind her is Tachyon, just planning something absolutely devious, bro. Like, for what reason could she possibly be finding it appropriate to smile like this mid-race? Anyway, the race goes on, right? 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is continuing to play by her strategy, saving her energy so that she can hit a big burst of speed during the last stretch of the race. And as the pack nears the last third or so of the track, 𝙏𝙖𝙡 starts getting a little cocky, right? Everything is going exactly as she planned, and so in her mind, she can't possibly be in a better position than the one she's in right now. Like, as far as 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is concerned, she basically has this race in the bag from this point moving forward. 𝙏𝙖𝙡 starts looking for her opening to take the lead, right? And she actually ends up finding the perfect opening on the far left corner of the pack. But just as 𝙏𝙖𝙡 begins to pick up the pace, just as she starts to make her move so that she can pull away, Tachyon suddenly flies from behind her with these crazy ass strides and snatches that potential lead right out of 𝙏𝙖𝙡's grasp before she can even process what the hell is going on. 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is absolutely stunned, dirt flying into her face and shit. She doesn't know what the hell is going on. Half a second ago, she was about to take the lead, and now all of a sudden Tachyon is at the front of the pack with a smooth stride and a half lead on all the rest of the girls. Like, bro, what the fuck? 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is stressed at this point, right? She's unable to think straight. She's barely able to keep her running form tight. Like, as of right now, 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is about to take an L on a magnitude in which she had never taken before. 𝙏𝙖𝙡 tries her best to pick up the pace in an attempt to hawk down Tachyon, but at this point the damage has already been done, and Tachyon is too far ahead of everyone else to be caught up with. As the race concludes, Tachyon flies across the finish line in first place, leaving 𝙏𝙖𝙡 in second and everyone else trying to wipe Tachyon's dust out their mouths. Now, an important thing to note about this race as it relates to 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏. Not only is this Pocket's first time ever losing in the big leagues, it's also, as far as I can tell, the first time the girl's ever gotten smoked in a race in general. And so, as you can imagine, of someone with a nature as competitive as hers, old 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏 doesn't take too kindly to the fact that there's someone out there who's a stronger Umamusume than she is. Over the following weeks, 𝙏𝙖𝙡 starts becoming borderline obsessive, right? She starts fiending for her get back on Tachyon, who attends the same horse girl high school as she does, by the way, and whole time as 𝙏𝙖𝙡 is training and plotting and doing whatever she's doing so that she doesn't lose the next race, Tachyon is just over there entirely immersed in her experiments, right? Like, her whole character is basically a take on that crazed, obsessive anime mad scientist trope that you'll see every now and then in certain anime, except instead of just being a straight up mad mad scientist. She's like a scientist racehorse that's obsessed with the science behind being a racehorse. Don't think about it too much, bro. It's an anime, bro. Anyway, as time continues to pass, both 𝙏𝙖 and 𝙏𝙖 continue their respective preparations, both of them improving themselves and honing their craft as they prepare for the next time they meet out on the track. And after a bunch of dramatic high school sports anime rival interactions that I'm, not really going to get into right now, the two of them finally meet out on the track once again for their long-awaited grudge match. This time, the grudge match is taking place at a race called the 𝙏𝙖 Show. Apparently, the 𝙏𝙖 Show is like this really big Japanese horse race IRL. Again, no reason to really keep track of the IRL lore like that. Just know that this race is really big and really important. As our two rivals are making their way from the locker room to the track, we already start seeing parallels to the first race, right? Like they're walking on opposite sides of the tunnel just like they were last time. The racetrack looks the same, weather conditions look the same, crowd looks the same, like damn near everything about this race seems like a do-over from their last race. All the horse girls line up at the starting gate getting ready for the race ahead of them. Before the race even kicks off, 𝙏𝙖 is already talking her shit, right? She's like, all y'all suck, I'm gonna whoop y'all asses because I'm the strongest, overconfident, rowdy anime MC type shit. After all the horse girls have lined up at the starting line, the 𝙏𝙖 Show is finally able to commence, and as all of the horse girls dash out the starting gate, our overconfident 𝙏𝙖 trips over her own feet, giving her a time disadvantage to start the race off. Now at this point, 𝙏𝙖 is shocked, right? Like because of her tripping at the very start of the race, the rest of the horse girls have like 3, 4, 5 strides on her as they make their way down the first straightaway. And so already things are looking pretty critical for Jungle Pocket if she plans on having any hope in winning this race. As the horse girls hit the first turn, 𝙏𝙖 is around the front middle of the pack, with Jungle Pocket coming in around the rear fourth or so. Now credit where credit is due. It takes a lot of speed to clear the gap that 𝙏𝙖 had between herself and the rest of the pack at the beginning of the race. And so I can't roast her too hard, but as the race currently stands right now, the fact remains that 𝙏𝙖 is smoking the shit out of Jungle Pocket. We get a look at 𝙏𝙖 as they cross the halfway point in the race, and even though she's slowly starting to gain ground on the rest of the horse girls in front of her, she's still struggling to crawl her way up to the front of the pack, right? Like 𝙏𝙖 and them are still a good 3 or so strides removed from where 𝙏𝙖 is in the running. Fortunately for 𝙏𝙖, at this point in the race, a lot of the girls towards the front of the pack start running out of stamina. Like if you know anything about track, you'll know that in races like this one, you can't necessarily use all your strength in the beginning or else you'll run out of steam before the race is over. When 𝙏𝙖 sees the girls at the front of the pack start slowing down, she does the opposite, right? She starts picking up the pace because she's been saving a good portion of her energy for this very moment where she can run up ahead and usurp the lead. Coming in from behind 𝙏𝙖 with a similar strategy is 𝙏𝙖. She starts using 𝙏𝙖 as like a guide for her own pace. And so when 𝙏𝙖 starts making her move, 𝙏𝙖 starts making her move as well, moving herself from the middle of the pack to the front of the pack, where she plans on making one last gambit to try to overtake 𝙏𝙖 and win the 𝙏𝙖 Show. We get a look up at 𝙏𝙖, who is gunning for first place at this point, and immediately upon seeing the girl, we can already tell that she's on some whole other shit, bro, because for some reason, despite the fact that the race is still tight as hell right now, 𝙏𝙖 is smiling, bruh. She's smiling like she somehow has another trick up her long ass sleeves. As the ladies hit the last turn, 𝙏𝙖 turns on the jets, right? She lets out her last burst of energy to catch up with 𝙏𝙖. Honestly, she probably could have saved some energy if she didn't anime scream out 𝙏𝙖's name mid-sprint, but that's neither here nor there, because as the girls hit the home stretch and 𝙏𝙖 finally starts closing in on 𝙏𝙖, who made her move up to first place, 𝙏𝙖 suddenly locks in and starts tweaking on some whole other shit, bruh. Like, don't get me wrong, the whole concept of horse girls running horse races and whatnot reeks of anime bullshit, but the type of bullshit that we're about to witness 𝙏𝙖 tap into, I don't know, bruh. It's just anime bullshit on like a whole different level. Like, you think them blue lock niggas be on bullshit? Alright, bro, check this out. For a second, I want to flash back to the weeks leading up to the 𝙏𝙖 Show. The weeks when both 𝙏𝙖 and 𝙏𝙖 were training so that they could be at their best during the big race. At one point during this montage, we get a look at 𝙏𝙖 while she's in her lab. And as she's in her lab studying horse girl races or whatever, she mentions the existence of this hypothetical scientific particle that can apparently move faster than light itself. Basically, there's a horse girl speed force that Takion is trying to tap into, and cut back to the Satsuki show, and we witness Takion, the high school horse girl, tapping into a literal speed force that allows her to surpass her limits and blow through the finish line quicker than Pake or any of the other horse girls could ever hope to keep up with.